Okay, I guess we can start with some introductions. My name is Corey Byron. I'm the Director of Guidance at Hanover High School. Thank you so much for joining us. We have about an hour program ahead of us, and it's mostly going to be Q&A. We're going to start with introductions. Janelle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Janelle Cost. I'm one of the guidance counselors at Hanover High School, and we're really excited that you're here, and welcome.
Julie, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Julie O'Neill. I am one of the guidance counselors at Hanover High School as well. And thank you so much for being here tonight. We're really excited to hear from our lovely panelists.
Let's start with St. A's.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lee Joyce. I work in the admission office at St. Anselm College as a counselor. I'm also a very proud graduate many years ago. My kids also attend St. Anselm College. So I'm doing this as a person who reads applications, talks with families about St. Anselm College and what it has to offer for your family and for your child. And I'm doing it as a mom as well. So I feel it's a little bit different than it was 30 years ago, certainly applying to colleges.
All right, let's go to UMass Amherst.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Drish, and I'm the Director of First Year Admissions at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Happy to be here tonight. Unlike Lee, my kids are all 9 and under, so I have not gone through the process with kids yet, so I can't relate to all the parents, but definitely have 20 years of helping a lot of students and families go through the college admission process. So I think we'll be able to share some really good information tonight. So looking forward to the conversation.
Stonehill.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Joe Dacey. I am Vice President for Enrollment Management at Stonehill College in Easton, Massachusetts. And I just learned that Mike and I have a lot in common. Similarly, our children are probably in the class of 2035, class of 2038 range. Like Lee, I am also a graduate of Stonehill, right? So I'm here and have the fortunate opportunity to represent not only the institution, but the institution I attended as well. And like Mike, I've been working in enrollment management, undergraduate student success, and financial aid for about 20 years. And really feel fortunate to have the opportunity to have a conversation tonight and tackle some of the questions you have, and ultimately maybe make some of this process a little less mysterious for everybody. So thanks for having us.
And finally, Tampa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Morgan Culp. I'm a current admissions counselor at the University of Tampa. I'm filling in for Kalia Bickers, who is the Massachusetts representative. I will attach her email as well as mine in the chat at the end of our presentation. I am a recent graduate from the University of Tampa. I graduated last May with my Bachelor of Arts in Journalism and Communication. Now I work at the University of Tampa and I'm a current graduate student. So if you couldn't tell, I love UT and I'm very excited to share a little bit more with you guys tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The format of the evening is all of the colleges and universities are going to share a little bit about their campus and what they're looking for in applicants. And we will be taking any questions in the chat. And as they come in, we will, someone will grab onto it and respond. And if they can respond in the chat, if it's school specific, they will do so. So let's get started. If you want to start, we'll go back up to the top to St. A's. If you want to get started and give a little blurb about your school and what you're looking for.
Okay, so St. Anselm College is a small Catholic liberal arts college in southern New Hampshire. And shout out to any alums who might be joining us in the audience tonight. They're usually on the South Shore. I can find somebody who either I graduated from college with or we know some sort of connection. We are, the college is a small college. We don't plan to get any bigger than 2,000 students. We are the third oldest Catholic college in New England. What makes us unique, I think, is that we are a Benedictine school. We actually have a monastery on campus with 30 Benedictine monks who live at St. A's and work at St. A's. And so it gives the college certainly a unique flavor. and a very homey feel to it as well. Many students who come to visit and tour St. A's say, wow, this school has kind students. It has a warm and fuzzy feel to it. And I think that's when students say why they chose St. A's for their school is because they came for a visit and they felt like this was a place that they'd be happy with at 4 years. We're a liberal arts college. Most of our degrees we give out our Bachelor of Arts degree, but ironically, our biggest program is nursing. We have a very large nursing program. 20% of our students, about 110 students per class, are working towards a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing, and they're going to be registered nurses. And it's a well-established nursing program. We've had it in place since 1953. Other big popular programs at St. A's are politics. The college traditionally hosts both the Democratic and the Republican presidential primary debates, because New Hampshire is the first state in the union to vote for the presidential primary elections. And the college is an ideal environment for hosting the debates and having all kinds of town halls. And so if your kid is interested in politics, St. A's is a great place to go, because they will meet the next president of the United States at St. Anselm College, a small college up in New Hampshire of all places. But every president since JFK has trotted around St. A's at some point. Also big at St. A's would be criminal justice. Business is very popular. I always want to make a plug for the traditional liberal arts majors of English and history, psychology. We have a good pre-med program in place as well. And that's kind of St. A's in a nutshell. There are a lot of lovely private liberal arts colleges in New England. I think St. A's is right up there with the best of them, but I'm very, very biased as a graduate. So I'll stop right there.
Cool. With UMass.
Yeah, great. So again, Mike Drish, and a little bit about UMass. Obviously, you are all very lucky as Massachusetts residents to have an incredible public university system in Massachusetts, which includes the state universities, but also includes the University of Massachusetts system, and Amherst is the flagship campus. Basically what that means is we're the oldest and we're the largest. And so at UMass Amherst, we are a large public research university. Large means we have over 20,000 undergraduate students on our campus, so you get that big school environment that a number of students are looking for. Research university basically means that we have an extensive array of research that complements the undergraduate student experience as well. So if you want to learn by doing during the school year, you have a lot of great opportunities to do so, no matter what your major. History majors do research, engineering majors do research, nursing majors do research. You have that wide range of option in front of you. And obviously, as a public university, we receive some of our funding from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and from other sources as well. So what defines a large public research university? There are a few characteristics that I'd like to highlight. One is the sheer opportunity, which usually presents itself to students and families as the variety of majors that are available. Over 100 majors in 10 schools and colleges, you have a wealth of opportunity in terms of your academic studies at UMass. You can double major, triple major, you can switch your major, and believe it or not, we are one of the top public flagships for our 4-year graduation rate. And so you're in, out, and on your way in 4 years. Which most people are pretty happy with, and you usually will graduate with multiple degree options or minors or certificate programs as well, which markets you very well when you're looking at that next step. And that's one of the other hallmarks of a large public research university is strong placement and return on investment. For what you're putting into it, what you get out of that education is pretty impressive. UMass has an alumni network of over 300,000 living alumni. One of the nice things is anywhere you go, you say UMass, people have heard of it, they know the name, and odds are you're going to run into someone. There probably are many alumni on here tonight that you have something right in common with. And that's a great benefit when you're looking at medical school, law school, any other graduate programs, or ultimately looking for a job. So the return on investment, that job placement rate, that alumni network, big hallmarks of a large public research university. The other thing that is a strength of ours is a campus of our size means it's a very diverse campus. We have students from every town in Massachusetts, all 50 states, hundreds of countries, and they have one thing in common. No matter what their background and their experience, they all chose UMass. And so they're enjoying their experience, but we have one of the most diverse campuses of any of the universities in the Northeast, and that's pretty exciting and a great benefit to you as a student, but also as an alum. And then the final thing that I'll say is a hallmark of a large research university that sometimes people don't think about is that many of us, including UMass, have a residential campus setting. The vast majority of our students live on campus all 4 years. That is not always the common at large public universities, but UMass kind of breaks the mold there. And we have a large residential campus community that does include the #1 campus dining in the country. So a great place to enjoy a meal, great place to live, and then you get all of the benefits of a world-class education as well. So one of the things that I'll highlight to wrap up is what we look for in a student. Obviously, if you like everything I just said, you should explore UMass a little bit more. But one thing that we absolutely talk about and think about with the application, and we'll explore this further, is whether or not a student will be a successful student at a place like UMass. Because as you've heard, you compare St. A's and UMass, some similarities, some big differences. And certain students will be happier and thrive and successful in one environment versus another. One isn't better or worse than the other, but we try to ensure that when we admit a student, that they will be set up for success at a university as large and diverse as ours. And so that's a big part of our admissions process.
So I think we'll stick with our order of operations here, and I'll jump in. I think it's a great segue, and we've got a good balance between our liberal arts institutions and our large public research institutions as well. For those who are less familiar with Stonehill College in Easton, Massachusetts, we're your closest Catholic private liberal arts and comprehensive college to Hanover, Massachusetts. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and be part of a bigger community. From a scale standpoint, we enroll approximately 2,500 undergraduate students in 50 different majors and about 80 different minors across our 2 schools, our School of Liberal Arts and Sciences and our School of Business. School of Business has been among one of our most popular and fastest growing programs since we built our new School of Business right in the center of our class. So many of you are familiar with our campus, and I know many of you may have had the opportunity to come and visit with us before. We receive about 7,000 applications for the approximately 650 to 670 seats in our first year incoming class. So we do have a relatively competitive application process. And just looking at and kind of thinking about some of the questions that have already popped up in the chat, when we think about the character of being, again, a private Catholic liberal arts institution in Massachusetts, founded in the Congregation of Holy Cross, the things that we expect our graduates to achieve are also the things that we look for in the application process. Our commitment is that each of our students, whether you're majoring in finance or psychology or criminology, is that every student has access to individual academic support. Every student, it builds up the competence to seek out that support when they need it, and every student graduates with a high impact learning experience. And whether that's undergraduate level research, a study abroad experience, internships, which are all baked into each of our programs, the students are developing the skills they need to talk about what's important to them, skills they need to be successful in the workplace or ultimately in graduate school. And we certainly think that those features and those expectations and commitments are reflected in how it is that we talk about students and how it is that we structure our academic programs and our advising. We have a paired advising model at Stonehill where every student has a faculty advisor and a professional advisor in our advising office available to them as well. I think one of the other questions that's come up are what helps students stand out. And that really does relate to those expectations we have of the experiences they'll enjoy on campus and the opportunities that'll be available to them in the job market. Students have, and you're seeing a reflection of it tonight, an abundance of choice. On average, candidly, our students are applying to about 10 schools when they're also choosing to apply to us. And in that environment where there's so many different options of different scale, of different location, different level of selectivity, different majors, when students are taking the opportunity to engage with the process, answering that external question, talk about why we're on the list, why they think we might be a good fit for them, reflecting maybe on the opportunity they had to visit our campus, or providing a little bit more information about what their journey through high school has been like, either through their essays or through the supplemental materials they provide, reaching out and having a conversation with an admission counselor to talk about what their journey has been like. Those types of skills, and certainly it's not an expectation we have that every student would take that step, but it certainly is a reflection of, I think, the level of investment and the level of deliberateness we want students to be able to have and demonstrate, not only in the application process, but also as they transition to becoming undergraduate students, obviously on the pathway to becoming professional students and professionals in their own chosen field. one of the things that some folks have talked about, and I've kind of alluded to some of our other majors, but I know it's reflected in the questions as well, is this idea of choosing a major, even at this stage. We know that program, right, and that the abundance and diversity program students can choose often is a driver. One of our most popular programs at Stonehill, I think something we're known for, is being undecided. I think sometimes being undecided and not necessarily knowing what you want to study is seen as a disadvantage, or seen as something that's deficient in some way. And I think that's really not true, right? Regardless of the schools that you're choosing, that abundance of choice, even among what's available to you as a degree pathway, is something you want to reflect on. You know, when you're looking at different schools and wanting to maintain some of your options, it's okay to think about schools where you might be able to change your mind pretty easily. Now, Mike alluded to that. I know we alluded to that as well. And certainly from an advising standpoint and from a student success standpoint, is something that we really pride ourselves on, is helping students discover that purpose, helping students discover that intentionality and that, that sense of purpose and meaning they want to have with whatever program they ultimately choose. So I'm going to take a step back, and we've got some great questions, and of course, give my colleague from University of Tampa a chance as well.
Thank you. I have a quick slideshow to share with you all, just to bring you back to Florida for a few minutes with me. So this is a photo of historic Plant Hall, Tampa Bay's very first hotel, built in the early 1800s, and now it resides as one of our largest academic buildings on campus. So we are a very historical university located right in the heart of the city of Tampa. If you're unfamiliar with the Tampa Bay area, these photos kind of sum up the experience. I recently added Tom Brady back to this slide here, so the Tampa Bay area is very happy to welcome him back. We do have partnerships with all of the major sports teams in the area. I did see a question about sports management. That is actually one of our most popular majors, and we do get students internships with the Buccaneers, the Rays, and the Lightning. So students get their foot in the door with some of those big name teams to start off their career, which is wonderful. If you're not a sports fan, there still are plenty of other things for you to do in the Tampa Bay area. We're located around 15 to 20 minutes away from some of the best beaches in the world, Clearwater and St. Petersburg Beach. So here's an aerial shot of our campus. We are a private medium-sized university comprised of around 9,600 undergraduate students. Our campus is very centrally located and everything is close together within walking distance. You can walk from one end of campus to the next in around 10 or 15 minutes. And as you can see, there are no major city streets cutting through our campus and obstructing the flow of student traffic, so it is very safe and easy to walk around. And as soon as you cross the bridge over the Hillsborough River, you are right in the heart of downtown Tampa, and you have all of the opportunities that a metropolitan downtown city presents itself with. We are an international university here at the University of Tampa. Each year we have students come from 70% out of state, 20% in-state from Florida, and 10% international. So it really is a very diverse student body and a lot of diversity on campus. Because we are a medium-sized university, we love to offer classes sized for your learning as a student, with our average class size of 21 students, and our faculty to student ratio is 1 to 17. We do offer over 200 areas of study here at the University of Tampa, and it is very easy to either change your major or pick up a second major or minor as you go along your college journey and really figure out what you'd like to do. Internships are a very important part of any college education, and the University of Tampa really emphasizes the importance of these, so much so that some of our majors might even require you to complete an internship upon graduation in that major. And as I mentioned before, we do have partnerships with all of the major sports teams in the area. But aside from that, for any of our medical or nursing professionals, you could be doing clinical hours at Tampa General Hospital or Moffitt Cancer Center, both within walking distance from the University of Tampa. And of course, we have partnerships with a number of other large Fortune 500 companies. If you're interested in studying or traveling abroad during your time in college, the University of Tampa is a very popular place to do this. We do offer over 1,000 different study and travel abroad opportunities for our students. And we also offer semester at sea if you'd like to have your own Zach and Cody on deck experience, if anyone remembers that show. Now I'll move on to student life and talk a little bit about that. We do have 27 different dining options on our campus that are all included in the meal plan. I threw up logos of some of my favorites there that some of you guys might recognize. And that photo is our largest dining hall, the Vaughn Center cafeteria. Moving around Tampa, if you're a freshman and you choose to live on campus that first year, you're not allowed to bring your car down, but that's not an issue. UT, and so is the city of Tampa, is very walkable and accessible. We do offer bike rentals as well as zip car rentals. This is a photo of our brand new fitness and rec center, which was just complete. We completely doubled the interior space of this building, which is the larger gym area open for all of our students. If anyone's interested in playing a sport during their time in college, we do have over 20 different NCAA Division II teams. We also offer Division I women's beach volleyball, and we have a number of club and intramural sports for you to join as well. When it comes to applying to the University of Tampa, we take the Common App, the UT app on our website, and the Coalition for College application. Our application opens mid to late August. So for my current juniors, be on the lookout for that when you start the fall of your senior year. We ask for official high school transcripts, a personal essay. With this essay, there's no set length or prompt requirement. We just suggest talking about your strengths and highlighting what you could bring to the University of Tampa. And our third requirement is 1 letter of recommendation, but you can send us up to 3. And I always say, of course, the more the merrier when it comes to letters of recommendation. And the University of Tampa is officially test optional, so we do not ask for any of the ACT or SAT test scores. And I'll skip through this here. For financial aid, we offer a number of different types. Merit scholarships are awarded without any necessary separate application. We just look at your unweighted GPA and award between $4,000 and $18,000 per year per student for that. The average sticker price for a full year of attendance at UT, including tuition, room, board, fees, and a meal plan, comes in around $42,000 a year, but over 95% of our students receive financial aid from us, with that average package coming in around $18,000. And thank you guys so much. There's our social media if you'd like to give us a follow.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to comment on, we decided to close the chat down. So any questions you have, please put in the Q&A box. It was a little confusing going back and forth, so we're just gonna stick with the Q&A. One of the questions that came up was, we get a lot about test optional schools and how much, if a student does or doesn't send in their SAT scores, how much that weighs into acceptance. And if any of you, I know some of you have been SAT optional for a while, and some of you are kind of brand new to that. So I was hoping one of you could speak to that, or even a few of you. Go ahead.
I can speak to it. At St. A's, we've been test optional for a number of years. We had required them for our nursing applicants until COVID hit, and then nobody, of course, could sit for the SAT. So we went test optional for nurses as well. And it worked out well for us. So we're test optional across the board for everybody now. I always want to reassure families that when I read an application, I see 3.5 or sometimes 3 years of work from a student, day-to-day tests and papers and reports and homework and all of that. And a standardized test is a 3.5-hour exam on a Saturday morning. And so it tells you how well a student can take a test, and it has value. Don't get me wrong, but I think that the day-to-day work has more value. And so a lot of colleges are going test optional because those test scores are, again, they have some value, but tells you how well somebody takes an exam, not necessarily how well they'll do in a class. And we're looking for what kind of academic muscle a student has picked up while they're in high school and what they're bringing forward to college. I hope that makes sense. And for at St. Anselm, and I think a lot of colleges will do this, for students who submit their test scores, if it helps them, then I absolutely use them if they work to a student's advantage. And if they don't, if their grades and their grade point average and their ranking class is higher than their SAT scores or their ACT scores, then I just black out those test scores, because I want to admit the students. So I want to look at everything that's going to be helpful. That's kind of a pragmatic way of doing it at St. A's.
Happy to chime in. At UMass Amherst, we are in the midst of a 3-year pilot of being a test optional university. So for the fall of 2023 cycle, we will be test optional, and we hope to have an answer about fall 2024 and beyond in the next few months, for anyone who might have younger siblings out there. What that basically means, test optional, up until the pandemic, we required the standardized testing, but we had for a number of years had moved to a holistic review, which means we look at everything in the application, not just a test score, not just a GPA, but kind of everything we ask about. So the transition wasn't too much of an issue for us. Our staff was used to reviewing applications and looking at everything, not just making a decision based on a few numbers or, like Lee said, kind of a few things that are one morning of your life. And so it wasn't a heavy factor. And so it was easy to kind of move to optional. Just from the perspective of being, a large university and a large volume of applications, the majority of students that applied, both last year and this year, the majority of students admitted, and the majority of students that received merit scholarships and the option of the Commonwealth Honors College did not have SAT or ACT scores. So you do not need a test score for UMass Amherst if you are looking to be competitive for admission. It's an optional factor. So if you send an optional letter in, we'd look at it. If you send an optional test score in, we will look at it. So if you're not happy with it, don't send it in and you'll be in the majority. So don't inadvertently hurt yourself. Send it in only if you think it could be a benefit to your overall application.
I mean, just to piggyback on what he said about sending scores, we're for those who have students taking the SAT school day at Hanover, we are going to be recommending to them to not add their college quite yet on where they want to send their scores, because we don't want them to, as he mentioned, inadvertently hurt themselves. So that will be something we'll be discussing with the students who are taking it on April 13th. Did anyone else want to comment on the testing optional?
No, I mean, it really just quickly it is a bit of a hot topic and likely an area where every institution that you might be considering is going to have maybe a slightly different policy. I think you have the luxury of, kind of starting this question and investigation kind of research process now, and a good idea to kind of do your due diligence and enjoy the luxury of time to research what schools might require, whether they're larger universities or smaller programs, and what they might recommend. It's a great, I mean, I think we're all counselors and advisors at heart, so getting the candid answer of when I should or shouldn't submit a test score from the schools you might be considering is always good advice. And I think Mike was speaking to that as well.
Okay. The next question we got was, what makes a student successful at your college or university? Morgan, do you want to answer? I'm just trying to get.
Sure. So here at the University of Tampa, we look for well-rounded students. So similar to what Mike was talking about with the holistic review, we also have a holistic approach to our admissions evaluations. So we're not looking solely at your GPA and your transcripts. We also really take into account what you share with us in that personal essay and what your letters of recommendation share about you as well. And I would say it is important to get involved outside of the classroom. If you'd like to join a club, play a sport, or even holding a part-time job, if that's something you can put on your resume, that's also an important thing that we look for in a student.
So along those lines, and I think, and it might have been alluded to in the question as well, is what are some of the elements that makes a student really successful once they arrive on campus? And as you're kind of looking at colleges and universities, thinking about asking questions of what do they have in place to help be sure that that's going to be the case? What are the supports, especially in the, kind of the age that we're in and the level of disruption students experience in high school? What resources, programs, or interventions have schools put in place to be sure that they're there to support their students to success? I mean, one of the most common things you might want to look for out there is, first year experience course. Is there something in place that teaches students how to become successful college students? When you're going from an environment where you're taking kind of the same 4, 5, or 6 classes every day, maybe on a rotational basis, and then you get into a college environment and your courses might only be meeting once a week or 2 or 3 times a week. And so much more of that initiative and kind of self-motivation to put in the time and the work and manage your time and your priorities when there are, just as Morgan said, so many of those other opportunities you want to get involved in and an extracurricular standpoint. One of the things that makes colleges successful, and I think incredibly valuable, is the degree to which we can show we're supporting your students through a 4-year graduation. So asking, how do they do that? How do you do it from that, advising model, from the first year experience course, from interventions when a student starts struggling? What infrastructure is there that in a non-high school environment where students are much more independent are there to help that student kind of stay on track, especially in that first critical year?
The other question we got is, what extracurricular activities do you look for? Do you look for students who are involved in a lot of different things, or do you look for students who are more involved in maybe 1 or 2 things, but really invested? How do you view extracurricular activities in your application process?
This is one of those questions that will really differ from college or university, because like I mentioned, I've worked at a few places, and there have been some offices where there's been admissions offices where there's been a big emphasis on variety. Like, you should have some impact, you should have some commitment, but it should be like, so some admissions offices like to see variety in that. Then I've worked at other places where if you have been in the performing arts and you love the performing arts and that's what you did, you'll be rewarded for that. So it's a really good question to ask your admissions representatives and to utilize your counselors who have good kind of connections with people in these different places to be able to say, if you're looking at this university, you might want to go on this track to be more competitive for admission. But these 3 over here, keep doing what you're doing and you'll be rewarded for that. And then it's your choice as a family, as a student, to go, okay, like which route sounds like the better route here? And so maybe we need to move past this one place, stay on track for these 3, because they're all telling me a similar answer and that's what I want to do. So you'll get some different answers, which I know is frustrating with higher education. It'd be nice if we all could agree on that. But the one thing I will say we all agree on is, as long as you're doing something outside of the classroom, you're already a step closer to that option of admission. How you pursue your time, it could vary from university selection process as to what they put more value on. And it's good to know that in advance.
The other question we had was, how do you decide on whether to apply early action? I'm sorry, the screen just went, there you go. Is an applicant accepted early action? Do they automatically go into normal deadline pool or applicants?
So, and I'm curious to hear what some of my other colleagues on the panel would say. And this is an area, and I'm going to sound like Mike a little bit here. It really does depend. It depends on the level of selectivity, and it depends on the different, application options. We as higher ed, probably in as much as sometimes there's a lack of clarity on what an activity means in one institution versus another. Similar would be the case with application deadlines. Again, when you're applying and you kind of get your list down to a manageable number of schools, getting a sense for which application option that institution would recommend based upon where you fit in their overall profile. The questions, we're here to answer those questions, but they might be a little different from one place to the next. The general guidance I offer to the students for your early action students, which is non-binding, and they just want to get their materials in and around that early to mid-November deadline, and likely hear back usually before the first year, oftentimes around the holiday season, is a great option for the student who's had a chance to do some research and has been on a pretty steady run and kind of improving or maintaining consistency in their curriculum and grades of those first 3 years up until the end of your junior year, maybe even including your first quarters of senior year. Early action is a great option. You're going to hear back in late December, early January, and you're going to have until May 1st to decide because you didn't give yourself a real early commitment deadline. I think sometimes in some places, regular decision might get a little bit of a bad reputation that's undeserved, right? For the student who's on an upward trend, for the student who's doing their strongest work in the strongest courses at the end of the junior year and the beginning of the senior year, and you want to show us how well you're doing by the midterm of your senior year, many of our processes will allow us to count and calculate some of that performance and give the student who's breaking in their strongest direction as they're getting into their senior year, which is closest to the work they'll be doing when they're in college, the benefit of being able to demonstrate that, right? So different students may be different paths. It really does depend on where you are with your level of confidence in the schools that are on your list, and your relative consistency and preparedness to get through the application process, to have those essays ready to go, the letters of recommendations kind of prepped. And again, for those folks who have joined us tonight, you have the luxury of time to kind of do your research and think about which option at which school. So it really does depend. Often when you're early action, if you're on that cusp, and again, this is where my colleagues might have different answers, you might be offered direct admission, you might be deferred to consideration with a regular pool later on, where you would then be asked to send in those senior grades, get a little bit more context, and occasionally if there's a level of confidence that this will not be a good fit, you would be then sort of liberated to consider other options, which is a nicer way of saying not.
Did anybody else want to comment on that? Does everyone feel good?
Sorry.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
was trying to get myself unmuted there. Just wanted to jump in here and talk about our process for admissions at the University of Tampa. So we do not offer any binding decisions, but starting in early fall of your senior year, we have 2 periods of early action, and we do suggest that all of our students try to apply as early as possible because we do not guarantee housing at the University of Tampa. So if you would like to live on campus, the earlier you apply, the earlier you get accepted, you can submit that deposit, which is fully refundable if you alert us by the 1st of May, and the earlier you can fill out our housing application if you would like to get on the list to live on campus. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
And to follow up on what Joe was saying, we a few things kind of with that notion of if you apply early action at UMass, you get an offer of admission or you're waitlisted. There's no defer. So you're on the wait list. We go through the regular decision pool. We have, again, students who may be waitlisted in regular decision. And then we usually go to the wait list in some point, usually later half of April into May. So students would relatively quickly around May 1st or before know that decision, but we do not defer any early action to regular. We used to do that. So that's why I always point it out, because people remember things and it's like, we don't do that anymore. And so that's important. And I would stress that applying early or regular, I think Joe outlined it really well. It's kind of a bit of a personal choice. Which one will prepare you and will you be able to present yourself the best you can? We guarantee housing to 100% of our first year students. So there's no issue. You can't even fill out the housing form until into May or June. So we don't kind of put any of that into the mix there. So housing's guaranteed. So you kind of apply through the process that's best for you. And you'll get a decision either on the earlier side or in March and still have until May 1.
The next question is, how do you know if your test score is good enough to help you at a particular school if you're test optional?
I think many high schools use a program. Does Hanover High School? I think many schools use something called Naviance, which graphs out, it's pretty easy to find an average score for a college, but the best way is to call your admission counselor, pick up the phone or an email and say, hey, this is my score. These are my grades in general. Do you think I should submit my score or not? It's worth the extra effort, I think. And good also to make a connection with somebody in an office who's looking to help you out. That's probably the best way to do it, is to pick up the phone or shoot an email directly to the college and inquire about it.
Okay. And just as a side note, we are actually at Hanover, this will be the last year we're using Naviance. We're actually moving over to SCORE. So that will be our new platform. So for all of parents on here at Hanover, grades 9 through 11, that will be what we'll be moving forward for your high school career. And even, for moving forward for grade 8 parents, because there might be some on here from middle school. The next question is, how do honors and AP courses figure into your selection, weighted versus unweighted GPAs? Anybody want to answer?
I kind of think this is a good UMass question. Sorry, Mike, but you've
I'm sensing hesitation
everyone
on
deserves
answering
to know
this.
the UMass approach because it's very important. Sorry, Mike.
No, happy to jump in there. I just didn't want to be the first one. It's always like we're all too polite. UMass, the UMass system and the state universities in Massachusetts, if you're not aware, recalculates your GPA. So when you apply, we don't look at your high school reported GPA. Nothing of that sort is a part of the process. So your GPA is recalculated based on your core academic courses. There are key subject matter areas. Not only do you have to have a certain number of courses as a minimum to be eligible for admission to UMass or the state universities, but then based on those types of courses, we'll recalculate your GPA. Also, if it's an honors course or an AP course, you get some added weight in that GPA recalculation. So the GPA recalc will include anything from 9th through 12th grade that you submit that you have a grade for. And so that gets a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, how waiting for regular, you could actually improve your recalculated GPA if we have that first fall term, those first fall term grades. But it's core academic courses, recalculated GPA. Taking AP, taking honors courses will no doubt give you a higher GPA at the UMass campuses or the state universities for that recalculation. On top of that, taking honors and AP, the reason we give you that weight is those are college preparatory courses. And so that's one thing that I'll especially let others talk about that, but that rigor, that preparedness leads to what we were talking about earlier, your success once you hit the ground running here. So there's a reason why we give it that added weight in the GPA recalculation for any of the state universities in Massachusetts.
Anybody else want to?
It's hard to beat Mike. It's, you know, like if I add something, is it just going to detract? But he's right. It's wonderful to see AP work because it is as close as you can get to a college course, just like seeing dual enrollment classes or running start classes. Those, I mean, my eyes just get right drawn to those right on the transcript. They're very impressive. But looking for academic rigor, again, it's how much muscle has the student built while they were in high school that they're then bringing to their college classes. I never want anybody to fail. I mean, a few stumbles here and there and a student who needs support, absolutely. But we're kind of morally obligated to make sure that the student has the ability to graduate in 4 years and do well. And so seeing good academic rigor gives an application reader confidence that they are appropriately welcoming a student on campus who's going to be successful.
Thank you. The next question, if a student is on an IEP, should they apply with that or maybe disclose that they have been on an IEP? And what are the pros and cons of doing so?
It's a really exceptional question. I think, you know, generally from an admission standpoint, and again, just as we've seen with a lot of the other questions, it may depend on the institution that you're considering, and you might want to. It's a great, you know, as mentioned earlier, call the counselor and say, "This is my student's situation in high school. You know, what guidance, what advice would you offer based upon what their learning journey has been like?" Obviously, as colleges and universities, I know we all have our own accessibility resources or offices which are set up to help our students who have had learning differences or learning accommodations in high school to be successful, make that transition to sort of different environment when they're in college. It's whether or not, I say from the admission standpoint, the general guidance we provide to families is let the transcript and the recommendations of the teacher and the counselor stand for themselves. Additional documentation that speaks to the specificity of a file or an IEP generally should not be submitted with the application, but to allow the students' advocates, the students' transcript, the essay, the academic explanation area on the Common App or on the institutional app to speak to that student's you know, journey as an academic in high school. Any additional documentation specific to diagnoses or accommodations really should go directly to the Accessibility Resources Office and through the credentialing process that they have in place, which is highly confidential. But at the candidate stage, it would be more limited to the materials that are coming directly from the school council office. And if I misspoke, given the processes my colleagues might have at their other institutions, feel free to correct.
The next question is, this was just about going back to how successful a student would be. What in an application lets you know that a student is going to be successful there, or helps you, gain insight into how they are going to be at school?
Happy to lead on this one, and others can jump in. I'll talk about our application in particular. We on the UMass Amherst section of the common application, we ask 2 questions that are open-ended narrative. One is why UMass, and the other one is why this program of study or field of study, which would include if you're undecided, you would talk about it there. We ask those 2 questions because it gives us a lot of insight. Students who answer those and talk about specific elements of the campus, about the character of the students or the environment, whatever they've researched and they've gotten to know, it helps us understand this is a student who understands a large public university and what it might take to succeed here. Same thing with why this major field of study. We are a school, we are 10 schools and colleges. Even if someone's undecided, it means they have a lot of options, but we kind of want to understand where are you in your thought process? How can we support you? How can we help you? And so by hearing that a student has done some research, and it's like they know these faculty do this, or there's research in these areas, or there's a center or institute that's connected to the major they want to be a part of, that helps us understand that this student is ready to maneuver this environment, this large environment that offers a lot of opportunity, but could be intimidating to a number of students. So that helps us feel good that we're not admitting someone who might be overwhelmed by the university, because that's not, back to what Lee said, we want everyone to be successful. And there's a different fit and different type of institution for everyone. And so we ask those questions, not just because it's nice. We don't want to hear about you love the tree-lined walkways and the green open lawns and biology is fun. But it's more like, what about it here? What about this place? What about this environment? So if a university takes the time to ask those questions on their supplement, too often people think, oh, those are like what I wrap my application up with. I'm just going to work on those, kind of put a few sentences down and call it a day. Sometimes those questions are the ones we care about the most. And not to put stress on that, but to think about how are you going to answer it, and be personal, be true to what you know and what you think, and you'll probably be rewarded for it and ultimately be more successful.
Anybody else?
My college is a liberal arts college, except for that large nursing program we have. So when I look at an applicant, I know that the student is going to have to take a core curriculum to get that Bachelor of Arts degree, regardless of what their major is. Maybe taking tons and tons of writing classes and doing a lot of reading. So for me, it's English grades, and then the composition of the essay, and then the supplement, which isn't always carefully edited by an outside parent, right? That sometimes somebody just does the last essay is just how can the student write, and is the student getting solid grades in their English classes especially. Now for nursing students, it's not English that I look at most carefully, it would be math and science. Because nursing students are going to have to measure medication, and they're going to have to take anatomy and biology, biochemistry and pathopharmacology and all of that. So for nursing students, an English grade can not be particularly strong, but their math and science have to be spot on. So that's, and I think a lot of liberal arts colleges will do that. They tend to stress the English classes, and then polytechnic schools or schools looking at engineering students might focus more on the math and science. But it depends on the college.
Okay. All right, the next question is, let's see. Let me see, hold on one second. I was answering one while I was trying to listen to you. So it's been really hard for kids to do volunteer work, really get out in their community during COVID. You know, in the past 2 years, a lot of the activities were unavailable. I know at Hanover, we weren't able to last year have as many clubs or opportunities for students due to some, you know, COVID regulations. Is that taken into consideration? And is that something that counselors should include in their school profile? If you could give us some feedback on that, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, this might be one we all want to kind of offer a little bit of commentary on, I think, because it's so relevant. And looking in the Q&A section, not only is it related to students' activities and engagement outside of the classroom and opportunities that might not have been in there, but also, you know, sort of the impact of different learning environments earlier on in their high school year, right, their first year and second year of high school. I would say, and again, we're a Common App exclusive school, and we know that the Common App, I think, has really been very thoughtful and very inclusive in providing that sort of COVID section in the application where students can really speak specifically to that, whether it was the learning environment or access to technology or learning difference and accommodation, whatever it might have been, that really manifested in terms of their overall candidacy and high school experience that might have an impact on, you know, what are choices that are available now. So I think transparency, candor up front with that, not only in the student's own voice in that designated, we're calling it the COVID section internally, right? So it's on there, but students can comment there, but also from, and you know, speaking with the community of school counselors tonight, in the voice of your school counselor, right? So as you're starting this process, the counseling meetings that you're having and reflecting on what your journey's been like, speaking with your counselor to be sure that if there are things that they don't know about, opportunities you wanted to be able to have or advancement that you wanted to make either in the classroom or in an extracurricular environment, they can really speak to that and validate it. I'd say that the school report form, the school council recommendation is one of the areas we look to first to provide context, not only on the school profile about curriculum and changes and difference, but also to that individual student and their citizenship and their journey through high school. And those are the things we make pretty copious notes on when we're evaluating that student's overall preparedness for that jump to the college level. The short answer would have been yes, absolutely. From a context standpoint, you know, situations and opportunities outside of a student's control, I think, are going to, for a really long time, remain part of that holistic process of understanding maybe how the past couple of years had an impact on the student's ability to engage and explore new activities or advance, you know, outside the classroom, but also, you know, unexpected kind of divergence in what their academic performance might have been. The context is key, both in the voice of the student and the teacher recs, right? That we look at the recommendations, and especially now, I think we get a lot of students who still submit the recommendation from the hardest class, best performance, right? The student who wants to be an English major who submits the AP English teacher who talks about how great of a writer they are. And they're validating things we see, but the teacher who maybe is in the sophomore year class in an area that was core and important to them, where the grade maybe doesn't reflect what that student feels was their investment of time or effort, but the teacher knows what that student's journey was and whatever barriers they might have faced. That teacher, that rec from the mathematics teacher or chemistry or even English, right? I mean, it depending on whatever that student's experience was, doesn't matter the subject. It's if they can speak to the student's perseverance when things were hard or unexpected, that's incredibly valuable in that process because they're going to experience something like that. Hopefully not like what they experienced, you know, in 2020, but something in college will be an experience that they have to navigate through difficulty. And the teacher's voice matters in that conversation to us. I apologize, I didn't do an actual short answer there.
I'm actually so glad you said that because that's what we were telling our students about teacher recommendations in our junior workshops. So that was really great to hear. Did anyone else want to comment on that before we go on to the next question? Okay. Let's go to, can you break down can you explain the breakdown and weighting of the different elements of an application? Grades, extracurricular activities, personal essay, test scores, letters of recommendation. Do you have different percentages? I know a lot of you were holistic. Maybe you can explain what that means. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
I'll start off if that's okay. So our holistic approach at the University of Tampa looks a little bit different for each of our students. So we do have the three main components of our application: the transcripts, the letter of recommendation, and the personal essay. So whichever of those three is showing the students' potential at the University of Tampa the most is what we will look at the most and weight the most, if that makes sense. So that will look a little bit different for each of our students. So if we have a student who might not have done so well in their, maybe say, math class, but they're involved in 2 extracurricular activities, they are leader of a team, and they are doing sports, things like that, we do take different categories into account when we're looking at each of our students, because we are aware of so many different circumstances within students' life, where each student is coming from, because we get students from all over the world. We get GPAs on a 100-point scale, a 4.0 scale, a 50-point scale. So we also have to go through and recalculate each student's GPA. And like it was previously mentioned, we do take into account those honors classes, the AP classes, and the dual enrollment classes.
You just,
Anybody
Corey, you
else
kind
wanna-
of said
go
like,
ahead.
what does it kind of, to go big picture, just like what Morgan said, it's kind of, if we ask for it, we're going to look at it. That's really what holistic review means. That if it's asked about on the application, or it's a part of the Common App, if we say we look at the whole person, what we mean by that is everything that we've asked you to provide. And so it's just looking at all of that and making a decision based on all of it. Very rarely is a decision made on one factor or one piece. It's usually one thing won't get you in, one thing won't automatically move you to deny. It's all of it looked at together. That's really the crux of holistic review. Whereas in the past, it may have been 1 or 2 pieces, as you heard from that question. Now it's like 6 or 7 pieces, or whatever it may be. So it's just a few more things to help us get a better lens on what life has been like for you as a student, as an academic student, and as just a member of your school or greater community. That's the goal that we're trying to get a grasp on.
We're going to move to the next question just for the sake of time. This one's on financial aid. Do outside scholarships hurt your financial aid package? Also, assuming your income stays the same, can you expect to pay the same each year? Can you expect what you get freshman year to continue, assuming grade requirements are achieved? Thank you.
So this is it's a great question. It's a very important question. You should absolutely ask every school when you get that aid package. It's another area where I think it's a depends, and it will vary maybe specifically by school, given their aid policies, both on the merit and need-based side. Generally, again, I guess all of our merit packages are guaranteed for all 4 years, as long as students make satisfactory academic progress. Another institution might tier it based upon the GPAs you receive. It really does, you see a lot of different variability. I will say generally when students become eligible for outside scholarships, the answers are going to change pretty wildly one institution to the next. Once you receive your institutional package, again, we treat them completely like an extra resource. It wouldn't offset for a Stonehill package, but that might be very different at another institution. So important question asked when you get that aid package once you've received some of your decisions. And I think being vigilant on the financial aid research side at the front end, not necessarily ruling schools out based upon the perception of cost, but trying to have an equally plural amount of schools to choose from a build cost, net cost standpoint. There is some great research available out there from a net price calculator standpoint. And I would say that in that financial aid award letter, there's great guidance on how to interpret it. And Lee made this point, and Morgan and Mike, we've all call the office. That is very much even more the recommendation and much stronger recommendation when it comes to financial aid. What does this award mean? How much of it is renewable? If my income stays the same, will the award relatively stay the same? Those are confident answers you want to have at the school choice level.
All right. Let's see. The next question is, knowing the current juniors are in their first full year of high school due to COVID, how does this play into admission? specifically those students who may have floundered more as juniors in their first full non-COVID year of high school and have done well freshman and sophomore year.
The last few years reading applications, it is all over the place, quite honestly. I've seen students do beautifully with their grades with remote work, and others struggle with their remote work. I mean, it's every student is a little bit different. And I think when reading an application, it's important to remember that they're a young person and COVID's been difficult. And I think anybody who reads an application is a human who's experienced the struggles of COVID as well. And so I like to think that it's not a computer crunching numbers when reading an application. It really is a living, breathing, empathetic human on the other side of the desk who understands, still trying to predict success based on past success. And so if a student has struggled, then you worry, is the student missed a few steps, or have they missed some pieces that were crucial for their future success? But I do think that the application readers are understanding and empathetic. I've yet to meet a jerk. But every college is different. But I do think that that most of us applied to colleges, and nobody likes to get judged. And so I did want to, we get it.
And just on a side note, I can speak for Hanover. In our school profile, we put what happened during COVID, the way that students were educated, what we're offering between virtual academy, what we're doing for hybrid, and also if students did have a difficult time, our counselors detailed that in the letter of recommendation, so colleges would know what was going on for that particular student beyond the general sort of COVID struggle. So I know that most counselors will do that for students. The next question is, does being a member of National Honor Society help admission? I know many schools have different views on this.
I'll jump in. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Being involved and active is really what we're looking for. I would say, especially the more selective or more competitive a college or university is, membership alone will not differentiate you. It's what you do to make an impact in that club or organization. So if you think about it, if you're in NHS and you're applying to a highly selective university, and there's the president, the treasurer, the vice president, the committee leads, or whatever it may be, someone who led this effort for NHS, and you've been a member for that highly selective place, you could be, just being a member may not give you enough for what that place is looking for. For other universities, being involved in clubs, whether or not you're leading or not, might be exactly what they're looking for. So it will vary. NHS in and of itself, I would say, isn't some magical differentiator. Kind of like, I forget who said it, but it's like, get involved, get active in what you like to do, and then you'll be impactful, or you'll present well in an application process. So if you have the opportunity to be in NHS, that's great, but it's not something that suddenly moves an application any further along than any other activity where you have the chance to make an impact.
We're going to take 2 more questions, and then we're going to, close it down, and you can certainly reach out to anyone on the panel for specific questions to their college. The last 2 questions, the first is for the class entering 2023, how will multiple students in college impact financial aid? And I believe there are changes coming to the FAFSA, so I don't know if anyone can speak to that.
Indeed, there are some potentially exciting changes coming to the FAFSA that could impact the way the need calculation works. I think some really important changes that the government's bringing forward in terms of FAFSA simplification, transparency around aid and need calculation. So that's, I think, a positive. Also, in the way that some of the parameters around eligibility for some federal and state entitlements. there has been a slowness, I think, in the specificity of some of those changes due to legislation pacing at the federal government level. And I'll hold off on the editorial there. Generally and historically, the need calculation that is going to be completed at the college level would be impacted by the number of students in college and in household. So the way that the calculation works is essentially you input a lot of, and essentially as the changes happen, a little bit less information about your household income, and the same type of information you provide at a pretty general level on your federal 1040 tax return form, which is also retrievable on the FAFSA, right? So there's a process by which you can opt in and have all that information kind of fed into your federal aid application. And then there are a couple of other questions related to how many people live in your household and how many students will you have in college. Oftentimes will get verified by the college or university or universities where you have your students enrolling. Needs analysis and the calculation of how much aid you might be eligible for, both at the merit level and potentially at the need level, is as or more specific to each individual college's build costs and their resources for providing aid. This is a non-answer answer. But generally speaking, the total resources of a household as the government would expect them to be allocated towards college expenses would be split between the number of students you would have in college. Now that can be to your benefit if you have, let's say, triplets or something like that. From the standpoint, if you may appear to be more eligible for additional outside aid, but as you have students going through college at a different pace, once one graduates, they sort of come out of that change eligibility, which gets back to the exact question somebody asked a little bit earlier, which is, when I receive that aid package, how do I know how this might change in the future based upon who's in my house and who else I have in college? And that is the biggest question to absolutely ask, and have a sit down conversation with your financial aid counselor at the schools you're considering. So we're hosting, and I know this is not unique to us, we host admitted student open houses, which are going on right now for seniors. Our entire financial aid staff is there. They host open drop-in appointments throughout the day. Take your aid package, go to the event, sit down with an aid counselor, do out your 4-year financing plan, and compare to other institutions. And that's where you ask those questions about household resources, job changes, all of those things. Every one of those elements or variables in the formula can be adjusted and evaluated and appealed in the financial assistance office. And again, if I overspoke to the state system or other private institutions on the call, I apologize, but I think it's good guidance to get at the individual student level.
Thank you. And just for parents out there, I know at Hanover, we offer a variety of financial aid nights where we have financial aid experts come in and talk about the FAFSA specifically. It's not specific to schools, but it talks about how to fill it out and information. So we will be doing, we just had one a few weeks ago, but we'll be doing another one in the fall. And I'm sure that other high schools will be offering those as well. So be in touch with your counselors and be checking their websites and for upcoming events. The last question that we're going to take is, this is another one about COVID. How has each of the colleges modified their selection process, given the negative impact of COVID on their academic and social maturity? This year's current junior class is in its first year of learning. I think COVID's a big concern for a lot of families.
One thing I would say is that the pandemic has impacted everyone. It's one thing that as college admissions professionals and as students and parents, we've all been affected by this. So we don't live in a bubble. It's not limited to one geographic region, one type of person or whatnot. It's everyone. And so for now, going on, kind of it'll be 3 cycles, we've had to really have this top of mind and forefront. And so we know that, like we talked about earlier, activities were disrupted because of a whole host of needs that arose or things that people could or couldn't do. We know that transcripts have been disrupted because of courses that may or may not have been offered, movement to remote, then back to in-person. What was that transition like? I think now more than ever, we really, our readers, our teams that are reading and making decisions on applications, they they can understand how that would have an impact in a way that sometimes other things that used to impact students or still do might not be as relatable, but we still try to understand it. This is very tangible. And so I think that I think Lee said this kind of, we're human, we care, we're not the office of denial, we're the office of admission, we're looking for reasons to admit. And a big part of it is just understanding. So how you as a student talk about it, how your teachers talk about it. I think Corey said that really well, like helping ensure teachers know how to talk about it. That's what we're looking for. The more you share, the more you tell us about the last few years, honestly, the better your chance of admission. But if you try and hope we don't see that year, we don't see those grades, we don't, if you think that maybe you can not explain it, that's usually where students do themselves a disservice. And so the more you address it and explain it and talk about it, odds are it'll probably benefit you. And so not enough students do that, and we're left, we can't make assumptions. So we have to go with what you tell us or what you don't tell us. That's what's there. You don't want us to make assumptions. So that's a big part of, I think, how we've adjusted in COVID is it's a lot of the foundational pieces we had all along, but there's much more empathy and understanding for this because we've all collectively gone through it in some way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I want to take an opportunity to thank all of our panelists. We really appreciate your time, and for all of the attendees for taking time out of your night to join us. I'm just going to do a shameless plug for another event we have coming up. On May 5th, we're going to be having a presenter provide information on the college essay and what can be helpful to students. So we hope that information will be going out and posted to our website as we get closer to the date. And we hope to see you there. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us on the panel, and we'll be happy to do our best to answer your questions. So thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Lee, Morgan, Joe, Mike, and Julie and Janelle for coming. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys all have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.